Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here tonight at the Santa Barbara Public Library. Tonight's program is part of our 2022 Book to Action programming, which is supported in whole or in part by the U.S. Institute of Museum and Library Services under the provisions of the Library Services and Technology Act, administered by California by the State Librarian. Book to Action takes the basic book club concept and expands it to create a dynamic series of events in collaboration with community partners. These events seek to bring our community together to read and discuss a book on a current topic, then attend author or speaker events, and put our newfound knowledge into action by participating in a community service project or civic engagement activity related to the book. This year, our programming is inspired by Island Visions, edited by Jacob Seigel Brielle and illustrated by Isaac Seigel-Boettner. The book features essays and infographics written by scientists, environmentalists, rangers, fishermen, and local outdoor enthusiasts, and explores what is special about the Channel Islands and why it's important to conserve the environment and cultural significance of this unique place. After tonight's event, we still have 3 more events in our Book to Action series. This Saturday, there'll be a cleanup at East Beach. Our Library on the Go will be there at 10 a.m. Doing its normal Library on the Go thing, and also we'll have supplies to do some beach cleanup while we're there. We'll be having next Thursday, June 9th, virtually at 5:30 p.m. our Trail Talk series about hiking and backpacking on the Channel Islands. And then finally on Tuesday, June 14th, here in the Central Library at 5:30 p.m., the Department of Sustainability and Resiliency with the City of Santa Barbara will be here to teach us about waste reduction practices and how we can do a little bit better on that front. I'll be posting all the links in the chat with the details for these programs, and you can also find more information on the calendar on the library's website. And at the end of the program, we'll also be posting a link to a survey that we'd love for you to help fill it out for us so that we can continue to do great programming like this. And so without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Please feel free to put any questions at all in the chat or in the Q&A box. We'll save them until the end of the presentation. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the evening, Holly Lohuis, marine biologist and naturalist with Jean-Michel Custo's Ocean Futures Society, Island Packers, boat concessionaire to the Channel Islands National Park, and Santa Barbara Maritime Museum.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening with you in the comforts of our home on Zoom. Of course, I'd much rather be presenting in person, but at least to thank you, the library, the Santa Barbara Library, for all these wonderful events, and really to highlight a beautiful book, Island Visions. I have my own couple copies and definitely utilized by the team I work with out on the Channel Islands National Park. So as Lisa mentioned, I am just going to launch right into my presentation here and have an opportunity to share with you this incredible world of Beluga and why we are so fortunate to live where we live and to appreciate the importance of a healthy ocean when it comes to sustaining all life on our planet. So we know we live on one home, and this is a home we share with just a diversity of life that provides the stability that gives us these living services to give us this opportunity to thrive as a species on this planet. Of course, most of the living space on this planet is underwater. So as a marine biologist, I appreciate the opportunity to take you right under the surface of the sea, where we do find 90% of the living space on our planet. I work with Jean-Michel Custo. I have had the immense pleasure and privilege to be his dive buddy for over 20 years, traveling around the world. Jean-Michel Custo is the oldest son of Jacques Cousteau, and he is based here in Santa Barbara, and his nonprofit is Ocean Futures Society. And I'm sure, like many of you in the audience, I grew up watching the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau And I had this dream or this vision of wanting to be a deep sea diver, swimming along in a silver suited wetsuit and swimming along Jacques Cousteau and his family as they really opened our eyes to the undersea world. And as I mentioned, Jean-Michel is his oldest son and living here in Santa Barbara today. He's been living here for over 30 years. This is a great opportunity to really share and highlight this incredible marine ecosystem right off our own coast. I went to UC Santa Barbara, graduated in aquatic biology in the early 90s, and started working right out at the Channel Islands, working for Island Packers, the boat concessionaire to the Channel Islands National Park, where we do host on our boats thousands of school kids that come out to learn about the precious resources in this incredible national park, one of the least visited national parks in our country, right off one of the more populated places in the world of the greater Los Angeles. So really enjoyed doing the marine education, and that's really where my career started, out at the Channel Islands, and a beautiful place here at Inspiration Point on Anacapa Island. But my work over the last 25 years has taken me around the world with Jean-Michel Custo and an extremely talented team of not only cinematographers and photographers, but of course scientists, as we have produced both IMAX film and TV documentaries, and really highlighting to the world the fragility of our water planet and why it takes us all to really appreciate our vital connection when it comes to protecting the oceans. From the endangered species of sea turtles and sharks to a lot of great comeback stories. But we know under the surface of the sea, we know that some of the most rich, diverse marine ecosystems are threatened today by human impact. And probably the most threatened ecosystem today on our planet would be the coral reefs. So the coral reefs of the tropics around the world host about a quarter of the species found in the world's oceans are found on these beautiful coral reefs that really only cover less than 1/10 of 1% of our planet. So about 1 million species that depend on these incredible coral reefs, and they're hard building animals that make the reefs of the world. From tiny little animals that live within the reef to, of course, huge schools of fish and sharks that depend on these oceanic habitats. And as we've explored and documented some of the changes happening in these fragile in these ecosystems, we've come to really appreciate that without the coral reefs, we wouldn't even have species we're still yet to discover today. And some of my more memorable dives with Jean-Michel Custo and the Ocean Creatures team was diving and looking for pygmy seahorses in Papua New Guinea. And it's a species of fish that have only relatively been discovered in the last 30 or 40 years, and still new species being discovered today. So as we've come to appreciate the coral reefs, I'll bring it back to our own backyard here, but these coral reefs are these solar-powered underwater cities where we could appreciate and really dignify the diversity of species, different animals working together, providing or helping to maintain the stability of these ecosystems, where we see there is no waste in nature underwater here. And through the work that we've done with Jean-Michel Custo and Ocean Creatures Society, we've had a series on PBS called the Jean-Michel Custo Ocean Adventures that has taken us all around the world, from the Amazon to the Arctic to even our own backyard of the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. As I mentioned, it's a large team that is behind the scenes when it comes to making these underwater documentaries and TV specials and films, all led by the leadership of Jean-Michel Custo. We spent a year filming the gray whales migrating up and down the California coast as they make this incredible migration from their summer feeding grounds up in the Arctic all the way down to the lagoons of Baja, Mexico. We spent 2 years focusing just on orcas, or killer whales, and we filmed killer whales in 5 different countries around the world, working with over a dozen scientists that are trying to better appreciate and understand these incredible apex predators within the ocean. We know they live in very complex society. It's a matriarchic society, and the success of an individual orca is all dependent on what mother or grandmother has taught you when it comes to surviving. We spent a couple summers up in the Arctic, one summer specifically filming beluga whales. They are an iconic species that are really telling us of a changing climate, and working with scientists like Dr. Greg O'Corey-Crow, who when putting on satellite tags, we could follow these individual animals over time that give us a sense of how they are adapting to a very, very rapid change in their environment, especially up in the Arctic. And in all my travels with Jean-Michel Custo and the Ocean Future Society team all around the world, I've come to see sort of the worst of humanity and what we're doing to this incredible water planet we call home. So our sense of out of sight, out of mind, or the convenience of throwing things away, we know in nature, there really is no sense of away. So our oceans are filling up with our debris, our trash, and it's having a tremendous impact on just this rich diversity of life that depends on the ocean. So I always like to highlight that some of these impacts facing our world's oceans today are very solvable. We could easily decrease the amount of plastic we use in our daily life, and really getting off of single-use plastic would help our oceans, of course, and help our entire planet. We are extremely dependent on fossil fuels. Jean-Michel Custo led a team. We were down in the Gulf of Mexico back in 2010 when we had the largest oil spill within the continental US, a tremendous oil spill that impacted millions of species. And it is a very important reminder on the impacts of drilling for a non-renewable source of energy, especially in the ocean, and the impact that it has on these fragile coastal and marine ecosystems. We are seeing today a tremendous loss of our coral reefs from climate change, ocean acidification. Our coral reefs are bleaching, and that's when the tiny little animal within the coral that makes the coral structure from calcium carbonate has a symbiotic relationship with a single cell algae called zooxanthellae. And when the water temperature warms, the algae will depart from the coral host. And unfortunately, at that time, the coral then loses most of its food source that the algae makes from photosynthesis. So it's quite a fragile connection between the plant and the animal that provides the structure that makes the reefs of the world, that then provides the habitat for over 1 million species. So just our use of fossil fuels and our warming of the climate is changing and degrading these reefs of the world. And these are just some of the alarming statistics that we have seen in just the last couple decades. So I mentioned this, and just to show you why these underwater cities of the coral reefs, and eventually to introduce you to the Kelp Forest. It's the habitat that is the structure. They're the architects that provide these incredible buildings of habitat for such a rich diversity of life. And as we've learned from the United Nations in a recent report that came out, we are due to lose over 1 million species of plants and animals because of our lifestyle choices and the way that we as humans are sort of degrading the natural systems of our planet that, of course, support us and all the rich diversity of life. So I am now back on the Island Packer boats after 25 years with Jean-Michel around the world. I am back part-time on the Island Packer boats, and it is incredible to have this sense of hope by coming back to our own backyard. We have seen a tremendous comeback of the great whales and the seals and sea lions, of the pinnipeds, to sit on a remote bluff at Cardwell Point on San Miguel Island, and to know that we could visit these true wilderness areas that are protected today for this rich diversity of marine life. We're very fortunate to have this incredible national park right off our coast here of Santa Barbara. Here we are, only an hour and a half from one of the more populated places in the world of Los Angeles, with over 16 plus million people. And we have this true national treasure of 5 of the 8 Channel Islands that make up the Channel Islands National Park. And visiting these islands is not only a treat in the sense of a step back in time to sort of imagine what our entire coastal California might have looked like a couple hundred years ago, but to really appreciate the fact that these islands are still so remote and fairly pristine, and to step foot on an isolated white sandy beach of San Miguel Island and to share it with only a few dozen visitors at a time is a real special treat to have right off our coast. So this area is so rich biologically because of the oceanographic conditions. Not only our geography is unique here, from this map showing the Southern California coast from Point Conception all the way down to Port Hueneme. We live along a coast called the California Bight, where our coastline, as you can see from this map, runs from the west to the east. So when we're standing out at the harbor of Santa Barbara and we're looking straight out to Santa Cruz Island, we're looking almost due south. So very unique geography here. And that also plays a part in our oceanographic conditions, from our atmospheric conditions of our winds, as well as our underwater currents. And this satellite image shows this incredible dynamic ecosystem of 2 major oceanic currents that literally collide within the Santa Barbara Channel. So the darker purple and blue represent the cold water of the California Current. And the California Current comes down the entire coast of North America, from really the Gulf of Alaska all the way down the entire coast, delivering very important rich nutrients. And it sort of slams into the 4 northern Channel Islands and mixes with this counter current we call the Davison Current that comes up from the south, from as far south as Mexico. So it's why we have such a high diversity of marine species, from colder water species to warmer water species around our 4 northern Channel Islands. And it's also because of the tremendous amount of wind, and we sure have had a lot of wind recently. Gale force winds just this holiday weekend last weekend. And these winds are instrumental in pushing the sea surface out towards sea. And that surface water then gets replenished by cold, nutrient-rich water we call upwelling. So we have a tremendous amount of upwelling off the entire coast here of California. And that upwelling is really important for the base of the food chain, or the primary production. And at the base of our food web here in the Santa Barbara Channel, of course, are the tiny little microscopic plankton and the phytoplankton, that are the plant plankton that is the base of this very rich food ecosystem. And just like plants on land, we know phytoplankton are instrumental in not only providing the diversity of a marine food web, but of course they take in CO2 through the process of photosynthesis and nutrient-rich waters. Phytoplankton produce over half of the oxygen that sustains us here on land. So Dr. Sylvia Earle, one of my childhood heroes, always liked to say, every other breath we take is a gift from the sea. And that's definitely true when it comes to the production of oxygen by phytoplankton in the surface waters where the sun could penetrate. And here around the Channel Islands National Park, we also have a Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary that extends 6 nautical miles around the same 5 islands within the national park. So not only the 4 northern Channel Islands, but also little Santa Barbara Island in the southern group. And what's really special about our coastal waters and the waters around the Channel Islands is we also have a very large network of marine protected areas. In fact, we protect almost 24% of our waters, which is much higher than our marine protected areas around the world, where we honestly protect less than 7% of our world's oceans. We know from the Channel Islands and research done by UC Santa Barbara and other institutions up and down the coast here that these MPAs, these marine protected areas, are helping to restore not only the abundance and biodiversity of marine life, but you also get a really important spillover. So some of the healthiest fisheries we have today are because of the benefit of these marine protected areas that have been in place, including our spiny lobster and our market squid, which would be our two largest fisheries here. So for me, working on the boats, really on the tour boat, we get to take visitors out to this very rich marine ecosystem. And this is a pretty common occurrence, coming across a huge feeding frenzy, lots of plankton that are feeding the small little bait fish, including anchovies. And the anchovies then provide the food then for the pelicans and the common dolphins, humpback whales that are visitors here right now, especially the humpback whales that are visiting us. As we have witnessed in just the last 30 years that I've been working out here since the early 90s, we have more whales in the Santa Barbara Channel today than we did just 30 years ago. And what we've come to really appreciate is these whales are these instrumental ecosystem engineers. They're helping to regulate climate through their fecal matter, which I will show in a moment. Fancy word for whale poop. They are enhancing ocean productivity. And we know as the great whales are increasing in numbers after over a couple hundred years of whaling, where we brought most of these larger great whales to the brink of extinction, we right now get to witness the comeback of the great whales. And we know that whale watching is a very important ecotourism opportunity around the world. And we have a lot of whales right here in the Santa Barbara Channel. All of our baleen whales, the larger baleen whales, are visitors. They're visiting us throughout the year, mostly in the spring, summer, and fall. But in the winter months, we get the Pacific gray whales that migrate. And it's a great time to jump on a whale watching boat, whether with Island Packers or the Condor Express or the Double Dolphin in the Santa Barbara Harbor. Definitely seeing humpback whales on a regular basis right now. And these humpback whales are considered a medium-sized baleen whale. So they have baleen in their mouth versus teeth, and they filter feed. They're filtering some of the smaller animals within the ocean that they're sustaining their very large body. Very impressive. Humpback whales are definitely known as some of the most acrobatic whales, as they are known to breach and tail lob and peck slap. We get a lot of that really fun activity right here in the Santa Barbara Channel. We are very fortunate to have one of the healthier populations of blue whales off our California coast. These blue whales spend the winter time down further south in Central America, and then they head up into the colder, nutrient-rich waters of the North Pacific. And if we get a lot of krill in the Santa Barbara Channel, we could have dozens of blue whales that will linger here in the channel. Right now, most recently, there's been some great blue whale sightings off of Monterey. But we have had a couple blue whale sightings so far this spring. A lot of our blue whales that we tend to see, our sightings are more commonly in the late summer and into the fall. And very impressive to see a 30-foot spout of a blue whale, or just the ginormous tail of an 80-foot animal diving down as it dives down to the deeper depths to feed. The second largest whale we are fortunate to see here in the Santa Barbara Channel. We just had a sighting of fin whales about a week ago, further to the south off the Wainimi Canyon. We have one of the Island Packer boats based in the Channel Islands Harbor. And so sometimes we're fortunate to see these baleen whales, the fin whales, in the deeper canyon of Wainimi Canyon, right off of Port Wainimi. And minke whales. Minke whales are our smallest baleen whale found around the world, and quite a healthy population of minke whales here that we can see. We call them the captain's whale. Usually it's the captain that sees the minke whale, and then they tend to be a little shyer and dive down. But a very distinguishing feature of a minke whale, you might notice that white spot underneath the surface, and that's a white spot on its pectoral fin. So we could identify the minke whale not only by the size, but that very distinct white on its pectoral fin. So whales have really come to the attention of climate scientists when we look at how the ocean is a tremendous sink for not only greenhouse gases, CO2 specifically, but also a tremendous amount of the heat that we are emitting through the burning of fossil fuels. So as our climate is warming through our activity, we are seeing that there are many animals in the world that are helping in the sense of blue carbon and providing a carbon sink. And one of the things that the whales are doing is providing this, what we call the whale pump. And whales dive down to a deeper depth to feed down in the darker waters. Sperm whales could dive over a mile deep, feeding on squid. Our humpback whales might be diving down a couple hundred feet when the schools of anchovies sink to deeper depths. And the blue whales, of course, diving a little bit deeper for the krill. And as they come up to the surface, of course, they're an air-breathing mammal. They need to breathe at the surface, but they also tend to use the bathroom at the surface. And I just gave a presentation to a school group up in Gaviota this morning, and they sure love to learn about whale fecal matter, which is really just a fancy word for really important fertilizer. So limited nutrients in the ocean would be iron and nitrogen, but there's a lot of iron and nitrogen in the fecal matter of whale poop. So whales use the bathroom at the surface, and all those nutrients then are critical for the increase of phytoplankton. More phytoplankton, then more CO2 is taken out of the atmosphere, and of course more oxygen is generated for us. So it's a win-win as we continue to put great conservation measures in place to protect the great whales of the world, as they're providing such an important service when it comes to using the surface water as their bathroom. And here's a picture of it. So of course, everybody loves to learn about whale poop, and it is truly very rich in iron, and iron is a critical nutrient for the production of phytoplankton. And these whales make these incredible migrations on an annual basis. Our gray whales migrate up and down the entire coast of North America. They spend their winter time up in the cold Arctic water where they feed on amphipods. Their favorite food source, it's a tiny little crab-like animal that lives in the muddy bottom. And they migrate some 5,000 to 6,000 miles all the way down to the lagoons of Baja, Mexico, because that's a really safe place to have your calf. So it's all about the reproduction, where they need to leave the Arctic in the wintertime, of course, because it freezes over, but the females really seek out the shallow protected lagoons of Baja, Mexico to have birth and to give birth, and then also to reproduce, as it's about a 12-month gestation. Fortunately for us in Southern California, that takes them up and down the entire coast here. We get to watch gray whales from the shore here, as well as on the whale watching boats. The humpback whales make a similar migration. Here in the North Pacific, we have at least 4 different populations of humpbacks. Of course, they're found in the northern and southern hemisphere. Our humpback whales in Southern California spend the winter time either down off of mainland Mexico is one population, and then another population goes all the way down to Central America. And then our humpback whales generally feed off the California and Oregon coast all spring, summer, and fall. Maybe some of you have been to Maui in the winter time. That's a very healthy population of humpback whales. But as you can see from this map, they generally head further north to feed up off of Southeast Alaska and up into the Gulf there. There are occasionally, we do see a Hawaiian humpback whale here in the Santa Barbara Channel. So it is known that they can cross populations, but we know from genetic studies and from tagging that they are generally in these what we call separate stocks found around the world. And when we put these super highways together of the great whales and the sperm whales, we can see our world's oceans are a very busy place with migrating baleen whales from the lower latitudes in the winter time, close to the tropics, where they like to spend the winter. Good place to go in the winter time, to the tropics. And once again, mainly for reproduction and for the calves. And then they migrate to the higher latitudes, whether it's in the Arctic or the Antarctica, where they then feast and feed for 4 to 6 months out of the entire year. So impressive migration here in the Santa Barbara Channel of the 90 or so different species of whales found around the world, whales, dolphins, and porpoise, as they all belong to a group of animals called cetaceans. We have 27 different species that have been documented right here on the Santa Barbara Channel. And of course, one of our favorites are our local residents, and these are common dolphins. Common dolphins, just back to common dolphins. I was out on the boat yesterday with about 50 fifth graders from Oxnard, and we had over a megapod, over 1,000 common dolphins on our boat ride out to Santa Cruz Island yesterday. So we do see common dolphins almost every day when heading out to the Channel Islands National Park and National Marine Sanctuary. We had bottlenose dolphins yesterday too, and they're super fun. Let me see the video plays. So that might be a little jumpy on Zoom, but bottlenose dolphins, common dolphins, these beautiful Pacific white-sided dolphins honestly come racing on over, whether you're on a private boat or on one of the local whale watching boats or the island packer boats out at the Channel Islands. We are just a big wave machine for them. So we provide a very fun bow wake and stern wake for them to play in. We also have rheso dolphins. They primarily feed on squid. So especially in the winter months when our squid fisheries are pretty busy out here around the islands, we definitely see a lot of rheso dolphins. And that's a beautiful look of rheso dolphins, very distinct coloration right off the south side there of Anacapa Island with the famous Arch Rock. And just a couple weeks ago, we had a couple of Dall's porpoise. They are known as the fastest of the cetaceans, almost making a rooster tail there. They generally are more colder water species, more commonly seen up in Monterey and further north up in Southeast Alaska. But occasionally we'll see Dall's porpoise here in the Santa Barbara Channel. And of course, our favorite, my favorite, I think it's a lot of the crew, and I know even the Condor Express always say how excited they are when we see killer whales. We don't see them very often. They are transient orcas here in the Santa Barbara Channel. We generally tell visitors we see them maybe once every other month or so. But in just the last month, we had 3 separate days of killer whales in the Santa Barbara Channel. One of the more famous families of killer whales would be the transient CA51s. The matriarch, her name is Star. And earlier today, I showed the kids the video of when Star and her family swam right under the Vanguard, the boat I was working on off of Anacapa, as they are known to approach boats pretty closely. But Star is commonly seen anywhere up and down the California coast, as far south as the Mexican border, and very commonly seen up in Monterey, as once again, they really specialize in feeding on marine mammals. So from sea lions to harbor seals to even gray whale calves. And as we really appreciate the fact that we have such a diversity of cetaceans, of whales and dolphins in our own backyard, we also have these remote islands that have for decades been a living laboratory when we've come to appreciate and understand the fragility of island ecosystems. The Channel Islands have never been connected to the mainland, so the species that are native out there, from the plants to the animals, the terrestrial animals, they somehow had to get across the barrier of a body of water to succeed as a species on a remote island. So when we look at just island ecosystems and island biogeography, these islands are referred to as the Galapagos Islands of the North Pacific because of 150 different species of plants and animals found nowhere else around the world. So Island Packers is a boat concessionaire out to the Channel Islands. Island Packers has 3 catamarans, including the Islander, as well as the Vanguard down in the Channel Islands Harbor. And the closest island is Anacapa Island, just about 12 miles across the Santa Barbara Channel from Ventura, a little bit closer from Channel Islands Harbor. And landing on these islands is always exciting in itself. Anacapa Island being a volcanic cliff of a tabletop mesa of the east end of Anacapa. We land at a pier there. The pier is being rebuilt right now. So right now at the moment, Anacapa is closed, but hoping to reopen sometime this summer. And then it's a nice warm welcome of 152 steps to the top of the island. And the landing cove of Anacapa Island is one of my favorite places to put on a dive mask and go underwater. An incredible kelp forest ecosystem, as the kelp forest is sort of our coral reefs of the tropics, as the kelp forest supports home and habitat for well over 800 different species. And some of the healthiest kelp forests in the world is found around the Channel Islands. So a really pretty place to jump on a local dive boat or bring a mask and snorkel as you head out around the islands. Landing on Anacapa Island this time of year, this is going to be your guide. You're going to have a western gull with its chicks. Take you down the nature trail. As Anacapa Island does not have the native island fox on Anacapa because of lack of fresh water, so there is really no land predators for nesting seabirds, especially ground nesting seabirds like the western gull. So we have tens of thousands of birds nesting on Anacapa Island, 9 different species, with the western gulls being the most abundant. So pretty neat to walk along the nature trail, and I'm literally standing on the trail only with my iPhone, taking a picture of a western gull with a newly hatched chick right there. And these chicks are, of course, important indicators. The western gulls are a very common species we see, but just the success of a nesting season gives us a sense of the abundance of the food that's available for the adults to seek to then feed their chicks. El Nino years, we can have a very high mortality of seabirds as well as seals and sea lions because of the lack of food that's available to feed the chicks. So these seabirds are monitored, and we look at these changes over time. We know we've had some drastic changes to these island ecosystems because of human impact. Some of the human impact that we've had have been on purpose, whether it's been through the ranching period without really understanding fragile island ecosystems and introduction of non-native animals, to the accidental introduction of non-native animals, such as the black rat, the European black rat that was accidentally introduced to Anacapa Island, maybe by some shipwrecks back as early as the mid-1850s. But what we do know is the black rats were very detrimental to some of the rarer seabirds, such as the Scripps murrelets. And through the work of the National Park Service with other agencies, they're able to monitor, indeed, by putting in a remote camera, that it was the rats that was causing a huge decline in some of these rarer seabirds on Anacapa Island. Fortunately, today, after a very successful eradication program, the rats are gone from Anacapa, and that happened about 20 years ago in the early 2000s. And the bird life on Anacapa today is just incredible, from the pigeon guillemots, the cormorants, to the California brown pelicans, back up to very healthy numbers around these islands. But the pelicans suffered another challenge about 50 years ago. And that was caused by a pesticide, DDT. And that is just a wonderful reminder that even though these islands are remote, they are still very connected to our mainland activity, especially via the ocean. So DDT being a very commonly used pesticide back in the 40s, 50s, and through the 60s, we now know DDT is very toxic, and it bioaccumulates up the food chain. So this chemical, is commonly used chemical, was impacting our birds of these remote islands, and the pelican population crashed on Anacapa Island in the late 60s and early 70s. It, of course, DDT impacted the peregrine falcons, the ospreys, and our local bald eagles. I should say DDT impacted bald eagles throughout the entire North America. The bald eagles population on the Channel Islands crashed in the 50s because of DDT and other human impact. And for over 50 years, our islands, our Channel Islands, had no bald eagles successfully nesting on the islands. Without bald eagles on the Channel Islands, their close cousin, the golden eagles, moved in. And the golden eagles, unlike the bald eagles primarily feed on fish. The golden eagles feed on small small terrestrial mammals. So as they moved out to the islands, they were attracted to the islands, especially Santa Cruz, because of the abundance, thousands of feral pigs that were left over from the ranching history on the Channel Islands. So a lot of easy food source for the golden eagles. And unfortunately, they then also preyed on our largest native mammal on the islands today, is the island fox. As the island foxes evolved on an island with no natural other grazers, and they were very vulnerable then to predation, especially a golden eagle from above. All this happened in the 90s when I was working out of college on the islands, when there were still a lot of sheep and a lot of pigs on Santa Cruz Island. In fact, there were so many sheep and pigs that we sometimes would take care of the orphan lambs, and we were catching the pigs. There were piglets everywhere. And the island fox population suffered because of these non-native animals. So the island foxes evolving with no natural predators. They're more of an omnivore when it comes to their diet, feeding on fruits and berries, as well as rodents and other animals. But they're more diurnal. They're out during the day. We get to see island foxes when hiking on the islands because, once again, they don't naturally have a predator on these islands. So the fox population on the 3 northern Channel Islands of Santa Cruz, Santa Rosa, and San Miguel plummeted in the 90s. On Santa Cruz Island, the population from over 2,000, close to 2,400 foxes. In the mid 90s was less than 80 animals by the turn of the century of 2000. So there was a quick, immediate action that took a variety of really skilled biologists and the National Park Service, working with the Institute of Wildlife Studies, the Nature Conservancy, different universities, to act quickly to save our island foxes that were on the brink of extinction. So captive breeding was put in place. Of course, they worked closely with the Santa Barbara Zoo, was a great partner in the success of this program. Golden eagles were captured and relocated to Northern California. Bald eagles were reintroduced. The young chicks that were ready to fledge were first fledged on Santa Cruz Island, and the pigs were eradicated. So all this happened in the last 20 years and has been a great success on the Channel Islands, where today we have a very healthy population of bald eagles. The first chick hatched after 50 years in 2006, just up the canyon in Pelican Bay of Santa Cruz Island. Today, the pelicans or the bald eagles are still monitored. They're still tagged. If you follow the web cameras of the Channel Islands National Park, Peter Sharp was just in the Fraser nest the other day and banding the 2 chicks that have hatched this last year. So it's a great way that we could follow these individual birds all over time. And they still do blood samples, as they're still detecting some DDT within the food source, but making sure that it's a minimal amount of DDT, and that between the peregrine falcon chick here and the bald eagles are back up to very healthy numbers around the Channel Islands, as well as the island foxes. So great conservation success in just such a short period of time. Island foxes, it's pup season right now. There's a family of pups that have been discovered way up in the canyons there of Santa Cruz Island. And always just a highlight to see, as I was been with school kids almost every day this last couple of weeks, back out at the East End at Scorpion Ranch, and to see an island fox. I really hope that these kids go home with the sense of the importance of this unique biodiversity and these island ecosystems, and what we can all do in working together to preserve this unique biodiversity and restore these island ecosystems. You head out on the Channel Islands, you might have a neighbor within your tent. These island foxes really are quite clever, but always just a friendly reminder to never keep any food in your tent. They have fox boxes, or really the bear boxes, there at all the campgrounds of the Channel Islands National Park, because these guys are pretty clever. And to be able to hike on these remote islands and see the plant communities restored, and some of the endangered plants today that are doing quite well, because once again of the great restorative efforts and the removal of non-native invasive species. So just a view of where my office was yesterday, sitting right above Scorpion Anchorage with a school group from Oxnard, looking out towards Anacapa Island. Highly recommend a visit out to the island. Just a quick little stop of where we go with island packers, from Prisoners Harbor at Santa Cruz Island over to Santa Rosa Island, a little longer of a boat ride. That's a very calm day at Santa Rosa Island. An average day would be quite windy out there, but quite beautiful, beautiful white sandy beaches. The campground is right above Water Canyon Beach. And then hiking and traveling to San Miguel Island, by far the most remote. Might notice there's no pier there at San Miguel Island, so it's a very fun, exciting landing by Zodiac through the surf onto the beach. But you are rewarded with some incredible views hiking out to Harris Point or Cardwell Point, where most of the beaches today at San Miguel Island is covered with seabirds and northern elephant seals, northern fur seals, California sea lions, spotted harbor seals, back up to very healthy numbers around the Channel Islands. In fact, real estate becomes so challenging, as it does here for us in Santa Barbara, finding a place to live. The California sea lions will just haul out on top of an elephant seal if they have to. So we live in an incredible place, and I really appreciate the Santa Barbara Library for giving me this opportunity just to share some of my own personal stories of my travels around the world with an amazing family of the Cousteaus and Jean-Michel Custo, and to bring it back to our own Channel Islands, a true hidden treasure right off our coast of the National Park, National Marine Sanctuary. My dream came true a couple years ago to be underwater with both Jean-Michel Custo and Dr. Sylvia Earle, my childhood hero, and to really hopefully inspire all of you to just follow your passion to really help us restore our world's oceans, from every other breath we take to all the services the ocean provides us, to protecting the critical endangered species of today, like the great hammerhead sharks, the coral reefs, and the kelp forests, and to know that we're doing this for the future generation. And this is my future. This is my son, Gavin, who is soon to graduate next week from Carpinteria High School. And so I'm continuing the work here with a couple different agencies and organizations, the Santa Barbara Maritime Museum, Jean-Michel Custo Ocean Futures, the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, working together, EDC, as we hope to designate our local waters as a whale heritage site. And to learn more, please reach out to me or visit our website, the Santa Barbara Channel Whale Heritage Site. It's just a designation to highlight to the world how fortunate we are to have such a diversity of whales and dolphins and porpoise in our own backyard. To finish real quick, a story of Scarlet, a friendly humpback whale we see here in the summertime. This last summer, she mugged not only the Condor Express a couple times, but here she's right off the Island Packer boat, the Island Explorer. And Scarlet is named because she represents a great success story of not only the comeback of the humpback whales, but she has survived a ship strike. So you can see the propeller wounds down her back. And that's one of the concerns of our great whales today, is being hit by these large container vessels that are carrying our goods. So just thinking about our environmental footprint, buying less, using less, recycling more, hopefully we could support great initiatives such as our Blue Whales and Blue Sky program here in the Santa Barbara Channel, which is a collaborative effort with the city of Santa Barbara to convince our ships to slow down in the Santa Barbara Channel, reduce their speed in half. As we know, if the ships go slower than 10 knots, that these whales are really good at getting out of the way. And we know it helps reduce air pollution and of course helps reduce noise pollution. So it's a win-win to work together with agencies and industry to minimize these impacts on the ocean and to share a story of Scarlet through happywhale.com. We get to follow her over time from photographs submitted by whale watchers and whale watching companies. We all are citizen scientists when jumping on board the boat, heading out to sea, photographing the whales. Scarlet was uploaded by a friend of ours, Lottie, and we had Scarlet on August 8th. And this is our encounter with Scarlet.
Oh, I got kissed.
So Scarlet is my hope, as I've yet to meet Scarlet, and I hope that she returns this summer. We're not sure where she goes in the winter time, but one of the friendly humpback whales we get to see here in the Santa Barbara Channel. So just a great collaborative effort of just me putting this presentation together and all the great organizations I work for today. Jean-Michel Custo Ocean Future Society, the Island Packers, a boat concessionaire out to the Channel Islands National Park, individual photographers, my boyfriend Chuck Graham, who's a photojournalist, and as well as the staff and some of our whale watchers who come out on our boats that provide the photographs that I've been able to share with you this evening. So I just appreciate this opportunity. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, Holly. If anyone else, it looks like we have one question so far, and if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the chat. And Holly, if you don't mind switching the hosting back to me, I'll make sure everything gets saved over properly when we're done.
Yes, hold on here a moment.
No worries at all. We'll give everybody a second to put any questions that they have in as well.
Okay, Lisa.
Thank you. All right. So a question from Jose, who asked, my daughter is really excited about this presentation. Where can we see it again? Are we going to share it? And thank you for your great work.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. It will be, right, Lisa? Lisa, you can tell more information on the YouTube.
Yeah, so if this has been recorded, and what we'll do is we'll take that recording and upload it to the Santa Barbara Public Library's YouTube. It'll probably be about a week before it gets up there, but keep an eye out and it'll be posted on all of our social media as well. Any other questions? Let's see. So are we observing changed behaviors of whales in the channel recently?
That's a great question. We've seen, so the gray whales, recently in the last couple of years, we've had what's called an unusual mortality event. We've had a kind of a high mortality, unfortunately, of gray whales. I should say gray whales are the only baleen whale as an entire species that's been delisted from the Endangered Species Act. There's individual populations of humpbacks that are doing really well today, but overall the gray whales were delisted back in 2006. So they've been doing really, really well. And over 20 years ago, we had this unusual mortality event of gray whales back in 2000. But by 2016, 17, they were back up to really high numbers of 27,000 individuals. And recently, they've also dropped again under 20,000. So we're seeing another big dip of gray whales. And is it climate related? Is it related to the food up in the Arctic? Is it increase of shipping traffic and they're staying further offshore? A lot of unanswered questions. I would say that change of behavior, we're not really seeing anything major. The question is, at the shipping lanes, we want these ships to stay in shipping lanes. We don't want ships zigzagging all over the ocean. So being in a designated shipping lane is really important. And the great research done by the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary and Cascadia Research, just a few different agencies working together with whale biologists, we know that when these ships do slow down, that most of the whales get out of the way. So whales are pretty focused on feeding when they come here in the Santa Barbara Channel. And a 80-foot blue whale just isn't aware of a big 20-knot ship bearing down on it. So it just doesn't know really how to get out of the way is what's thought. But when the ship goes less than 10 knots, the whales can get out of the way. I should say the last 2 years have been La Nina years, so really cold, a lot of wind. We've had lots of wind, a lot of nutrients out of that upwelling. So incredible feeding frenzies, especially in the spring. We've had a tremendous amount of lunge feeding of humpback whales. So I haven't really seen any change in that sense of behavior. It's been a really good, productive spring so far, which I think will be very hopeful for a great summer and fall for whale watching.
Okay, so our next question is, do we have any idea what's happening with the pelicans right now?
That's a great question. The Santa Barbara Wildlife Care Network, they're fabulous. I've helped rescue a couple birds last weekend. I took them up to the center. They're still trying to determine, as they've taken in over 150 plus pelicans. A few people in the beginning thought maybe domoic acid, which is a naturally occurring neurotoxin found in plankton. And we get a plankton abundance of this type of plankton that carries this neurotoxin. This domoic acid impacts the food chain, especially pelicans and California sea lions, for example. The veterinarians weren't really seeing that common behavior of that type of toxic poison of the domoic acid. But we have had pelicans like in the freeway and off of the 192. We had a pelican at Carpinteria High School last weekend. That's very unusual behavior. So they're not sure if it's a food source related, but I have to say, just yesterday on the boat with a megapod of common dolphins, they're all feeding on this huge bait ball of anchovies that are right under the surface. So it seems like there's plenty of food for the pelicans. It has been a banner year of pelicans. There's been a high number of chicks that have hatched out on the islands. So whether this is just a natural dip in the population, I think it's just a great example of all the unanswered questions we still have of our changing climate, natural changes, as well as more human-induced changes. So the Santa Barbara Wildlife Care Network, follow them. They'll release the report from the California Fish and Wildlife Service once they pinpoint the exact cause of this high number of pelicans that are sick and skinny and dehydrated, and of course a high mortality of them right now.
Okay, and it looks like we have time for just a couple more questions. So are there any indications of a recovery of the basking shark population in the channel?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to make note of that and look into that, because we did have a basking shark sighting off of Chinese Harbor a couple weeks ago, the Island Packer boats. And then I know the Condor Express had a beautiful sighting of 3 basking sharks last month. So basking sharks, unfortunately, were not only a victim to our gillnet fisheries, they're a non-targeted species, so they're bycatch. So that unfortunately had an impact of our basking sharks. There was also a fishery for basking sharks about 50 years ago that really hit most of our basking sharks off of California. We don't know a lot about basking sharks, to be honest, like where do they migrate to? So I know a few years ago, we had some great basking shark sightings in the month of June. And I know the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary and their biologists were trying to put out some trackers on the individuals. So I like to think as the ocean is very healthy with a lot of nutrients, basking sharks being the second largest fish in the ocean, second to a whale shark. And like a whale shark, they're filter feeders. So they're feeding on that rich zooplankton life in the water column. So as we continue to hopefully have rich productivity, we'll have more basking shark sightings. So great question.
All right, and so this one isn't a question, but it's a comment. Says, I think I was one of those students you took on the Anacapa treats back in the day. In the old photo of you working on the island packer trips, I noticed an old classmate on a field trip we took back when I was in the 5th grade, which is a
No
full
way.
circle because I'm teaching 5th grade this year and attending you speaking. So thank you, and I'm thrilled to still be learning from you to this day. And that's from Heather.
Oh, wow, Heather, please reach out to me personally, and I would love to share that picture with you so you could share it with your classmate. That was on the Vanguard, and we were right off of Anacapa Island, so that's really cool. And happy to come talk to your 5th graders anytime about whales or Channel Islands. So thank you very much for your comment, and thank you for being here.
All right, and then one final question, which I think is a fun one to end with. What is the coolest or most amazing experience you've had in connection with the ocean?
Oh, I always love that question. It's really hard to answer. Pretty amazing experiences, of course, with Jean-Michel Custo, diving around the world and diving with hundreds of Galapagos sharks in the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands, or with the hammerheads in Bahamas. That was our closing scene of our IMAX film. But I think some of my most memorable moments are right here in our own backyard. Incredible sightings of whales and orcas. And I didn't have a chance to share an individual humpback by the name of Flip that we had off the Island Packer boats. In fact, it was a friendly encounter we had with Flip 2 days in a row with Captain Page on the Island Explorer right off of Santa Cruz Island. And as Flip name implies, he loves to come over by the boat and just flip over. So I was on the boat that day on October 31st, and we had Flip, and I still share that story with students today because that is definitely one of my most memorable days out here in the Santa Barbara Channel and the Channel Islands National Park and National Marine Sanctuary.
Well, thank you so much, Holly, for being here tonight with us. Thank all of you who are participants for great questions, for showing up tonight. I've reposted the event survey down in the chat. We would love to have you fill it out. We really appreciate it. And that is all we have for you tonight. So thank you so much for being with us, and take a look for the YouTube. We should have this up in the next couple weeks or so. So have a wonderful night. We hope you'll stop by to our other Book to Action events, and we'll see you at the library soon. Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Lisa. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Thank you.